Okay, so we're back again, digging into anti-fragility in the context of common executive experiences or challenges that any sort of C-suite exec or really high performance executive, corporate athlete, if you will, might find themselves in. And so in our first couple of weeks, we broke down what exactly we mean by anti-fragility. We really said three components. It's well-being or building the good, resilience, navigating, coming back from the bad, and then optimizing performance. In our second week, we broke that down a little further and talked about a simple framework to help executives start to do that, top down, bottom up, outside in. This particular week, we've gotten down into even more granular ideas about well-being, resilience, and performance by starting to dive into the 7 subcomponents we really focus on in the way we talk and the way we train and some of the things that we write and the sort of content we put out there. So first and foremost, what that means for us is awareness and attention. So Adam, I thought we'd start today by at least like grounding awareness, attention in kind of a short list of common things that this might impact, right, for that sort of corporate athlete. So we can kind of riff and bounce back and forth here, but my head goes to things like emotion regulation and the part that that would play in discipline and the way that they might respond to an employee and the way that they might self-regulate or not and the way that they feel about the job. But that's just kind of one example. What are the various things that come to your mind when you think about what improved awareness could do or unlock for the typical high-level corporate athlete?
I think a big part of this too is just being able to detach from distractions. So the idea again in terms of awareness is like your ability to perceive and feel what's going around you is a conscious understanding of your internal and external states, but your attention on the other hand is about selectively concentrating on something discrete in terms of information or a conversation or a project. And I think so much about this is being called into meetings and being, can I have 30 seconds and the phone call and all these other things that often will get in the way of where one's attention should be focused in the here and now. So the more we can develop this and we can train this and the benefits of mindfulness techniques and sleep and all these things that kind of create a better foundation and structure for us to control this is going to make the executive more present.
It sounded to me, and maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but it sounded to me like you were using awareness and intention synonymously. We were actually getting into awareness a little bit, and you dipped into attention. Will you kind of lay out what you see as the differences, if you do see a difference?
The awareness part is a conscious understanding of your internal and external environment, right? It's a general awareness to perceive and to feel, right? Whether it's your internal or external events. Attention is much more pointed. And it's a concentrated process. It's selective concentration. You're really digging in, whether it's subjective or objective. But in other words, you're finding the signal within the greater noise that sits in awareness.
Okay. So I've got a project coming up at work. I'm feeling a lot of stress and pressure and fear around, right? So I have this inclination to procrastinate. Awareness is noticing the fear, right? It is catching the initial resistance. It is kind of becoming aware, right, of a potential challenge or problem. Attention then is sustaining, right, conscious focus and effort on trying to deal with said problem in some way, shape, or form, right? So again, coming back to our list, and you just gave another good example, traction and distraction, right? You've got to become aware before you can regulate how you're thinking, before you can regulate how you're feeling or respond to how you're feeling, right? And it might seem like an obvious thing, but for a lot of the people that we work with, they don't train up this skill, and so they end up going through a lot of their day kind of in default mode or zombie mode, if you will. I don't know if you find that, with a lot of your personal clients
Sure,
as well.
I do, and I think awareness also surrounds emotional awareness, which is important because the question is, why are you truly procrastinating? Are you procrastinating because you're a perfectionist? Are you procrastinating for fear of judgment or losing the deal or losing the bid or losing that job promotion? I think being honest with yourself is it has to start with like, why am I actually avoiding what needs to get done? So then I can hone in on my attention. I can move forward with a value-based action. If that awareness part is not trained, it's not in place, I think largely we could stay in limbo, or you may be busy, but you're not actually moving forward in terms of what you want to accomplish.
So by training awareness and or training attention, we can potentially enhance emotion regulation, we can potentially enhance our ability to focus, we can potentially enhance our ability to mitigate distractions. You just brought up enhance our ability to be self-reflective, right? To dig in deeper, to assess, to improve, right? To kind of get outside of ourselves on a metacognitive level. We can probably shift and either make or break good and bad habits, depending on what we do, if we're more aware of the habits we're engaging in. Really, pretty much anything that we talk about in the world of well-being, resilience, or performance ultimately starts with increased capacity to be aware and then to direct and sustain attention. So let's talk a little bit about the how-to, and we'll get into this more deeply, I think, in future episodes where we really take on some of the science here. Right, so I know I just exhausted the list, Adam, like, awareness and attention applies to basically everything, but is there anything else like really specific to kind of executives or corporate athletes you think needs to be mentioned here?
Sure. I think awareness comes into play too in terms of your management style or your leadership style. And the idea is that some of the best leaders don't necessarily adhere to one style. They tend to be more contextually appropriate. And the ability to read the scene or read the person in front of you. So part of being aware is situational awareness is understanding who your customer is, understanding who your teammate is, and responding in a way that's appropriate to the context, which awareness allows for that flexibility and adaptability in the here and now.
Yeah, well said. Okay, so then that leads us to, I think, the natural question, which is the how-to piece. Now, there's a lot of different things we could get into here, and we'll get into, I think, even more granular aspects in future episodes. But for now, when we talk about where the juice is worth the squeeze, for the really busy, stress, pressured, high-powered sort of corporate athlete, surgeon, attorney, whatever it might be, if they just at least want to start improving their ability to be aware, which I know sounds simple, but it takes practice, what should they do?
The first place that we start is with mindfulness training. And the idea with this is that, if we're trying to make people become more present and engaged, you have to be aware of where your focus is. So increasing that capacity with an intention and a practice is helpful. Perhaps it's overdone. I think maybe it'd be oversold. I think it's not a miracle cure. But if you set your expectations accordingly, the research is clear. There is no ambiguity. It's impactful.
So what does it impact, right? So, okay, we can increase general awareness. To your point earlier, that means as we do this, we should notice our ability to sense our internal and external sort of state, environment, condition. That should go up, right? We should increase awareness. But what might some of the other kind of positive byproducts be of a mindfulness practice, maybe that people haven't necessarily considered?
So it's important to understand, too, how mindfulness impacts attention, right? Because they're intimately created.
Right.
So part of sitting and being aware, for instance, of a mantra or a breath or simply counting is that the value is when you lose your attention and it goes elsewhere. And usually it's it's either future focused or past focused, but your awareness of that process allows you to bring you back to the present moment. And doing those reps over time allows you to build that muscle.
Yeah. Perfectly said. I think that's an important piece, and we've referenced it once or twice, but like kind of the phrase buy-in. Sometimes people hear mindfulness, they think it's oversold. It sounds like this miracle cure that's going to like create all these positive things. At the most fundamental level, it's really just practicing sustained attention, right? Which can help us in all sorts of different ways, many of which we've listed here, right? So when it comes down to habits, emotion regulation, the way we listen to people, the way we respond to people, the way we execute discipline or deal with traction or distraction, right? Implications on performance. All of it comes down to our ability to be aware and then direct and sustain our attention, right? So more on this in future episodes, but if you're looking to dig into the science a little bit more, check out some of our science-based shorts and our other playlists. And then of course, we've got a ton of zero-cost resources available to you on the website that can help you start to implement.